Visit us at Eduvvo. Thank you for calling Eduvvo.
With that, it's time to really dive into the code, and for that, let's look into the only Dart file we have at the moment in our lib folder. It's the main.dart file, and since this is the only Dart file we have right now, and since I mentioned that this is the folder in which we will write our entire application in the end, this has to be the file that is responsible for giving us the output we're seeing here, so for giving us this application. And indeed, that is the case. This single file holds all the code that renders this application onto the screen. And how does it do that? Because overall, this is a pretty lean file. It doesn't have that much code. All these green lines here with the double slashes at the beginning are just comments. So this is not even code that does something. It's just there for you to explain what happens thereafter. So in the end, this is a really lean file. What is this file doing here? We will rewrite this file to create an application from scratch, but before we do that, I want to briefly walk you through it so that you get an understanding, a basic understanding of how such a Flutter application works and what Flutter does for you. Flutter, as you already learned or as I already mentioned, is both a tool set and a framework, a programming framework for the Dart language. And in the end, a Flutter app is an application where you, the developer, build a UI by adding widgets. Widgets are components, the building blocks of your user interface. Like this button here in the bottom right corner, that would be a widget. The text here, that would be a widget. The app bar here at the top and the title in there, that would be widgets. And that's what you can see in the code here. Even if we don't understand all of that code, if we scroll down a little bit here to this build method in that my homepage state thing, which is totally unclear for now. But if we scroll down there, we can identify things like app bar, or things like text and another text, or things like a floating action button. And even if you don't really understand Dart and Flutter, it probably makes sense that this floating action button is kind of related to that floating button we have here in the bottom right corner. And the two text pieces we have here, text and text, where we see you have pushed the button this many times, that seems to be responsible for giving us this text here in the middle. And indeed, that is how this works. These are widgets which we didn't create ourselves, but which are built into Flutter, which ship with the Flutter framework, which we can use to put some text onto the screen or to add a button to the screen. And of course, we got way more widgets than these two different kinds of widgets. We got widgets for different kinds of buttons, for drop-downs, for images, for lists which we can scroll, for so many things. And that is how Flutter works. You work with these built-in widgets and you build your user interface based on them. And you can configure all these widgets to change their colors, or for example here, to change the text size. And you can also build your own widgets which take these built-in widgets and group them together to build a brand new custom widget, which you can then put somewhere. For example, you could be combining this smaller and this bigger text, and then have your My Custom Output widget, which always prints or draws this smaller and bigger text on the screen if you would need this combination in other places of your app too. And we'll dive into all of that throughout the course, and I will explain Dart and how Flutter works and how you create such widgets whilst we are diving into that, no worries. Here in this starting code, we can already see that here we seem to be doing something with a widget, so maybe this is code that does create a custom widget, and indeed we're doing that here. But again, I think it makes more sense and it's easier to understand this if we do that step by step. And for that, let's actually select the entire code in the main.dart file and delete it. Now, why am I doing that? Because I want to create a complete app with you from scratch. I could just give you the instructions on, okay, now add this, now let's do that. And you would have a working application, but you would learn nothing about how it works. And it's super important to understand how it works and why you write which code, not only to learn Dart, but also to learn how Flutter works. And that is what you need to build your own Flutter apps. Because otherwise you can only build exactly the same app I show you, but I want you to be able to build any app. And for that, you need to learn it from scratch. So let's remove all that code in main Dart. Let's save the file. It now automatically rebuilds the app and syncs it back, and therefore this now crashes because we're not starting anything here, and we get an error here at the bottom. And that is all right. We will now write our own code here.